Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Nicholas Davenport, aka Mr. Mental Muscle, and I'm here with
Caitlin Klanuski.
and we want to talk about 10 things that's holding you back from greatness. Now, greatness is subjective. It doesn't mean you necessarily have a big house, millions of dollars, fancy cars, clothes. It could if that's what you want, but I'm gonna take a note from Earl Nightingale, who said, a man is what he thinks about all day, and if he wants to be a teacher and he does that, he's successful. If he wants to be a lawyer, he does that, so he wants to be successful. That's what it is. So regardless of what that is for you, we're going to show you what may be limiting you, because often we think about what to do. We all know work hard, be great, put in the effort, consistency. Let's talk about what could hold you back. So I'll start it off. So the first one, they want to not lose. They play or go on the endeavor to not fail or not lose. And I get the logic of who wants to fail or not be successful what they're doing. But if you put so much effort into trying to be the person who doesn't accomplish the goal, you negate what you need to do. So let's say, for example, I use this analogy all the time in basketball. If you're at the free throw line and you say something like, don't miss, you're worried so much about not missing that your brain's still primed for the word miss, meaning you're taking away actual motor function from the perfect form or the good shot, and then you do what you didn't want to do anyway. So try to focus on the things that go into the success. Not saying you negate the failure. You still want to have that in your mind, because I'm big on you look for both sides, but you never want to go too much on playing it so safe. Because would you rather have the person with the record of 10-5 or the person with the record of 1-1? Granted, they lost less, but they won less too. So that's my first one. What you got?
So what I got from my first point is the idea of self-handicapping, which especially happens out of a fear of failure. So I like how you just introduced this idea of fear for me. So self-handicapping is when you withdraw effort or when you don't do something out of whether it's fear of failing, whether it's maybe embarrassment or shame, or maybe just because you're scared to try something new or the uncomfortability of it. So a lot of times I think something that holds us back in all spectrums of life is kind of this idea of self-handicapping and just not going out after something that maybe we want to do deep down inside, but we just don't do it for whatever that reason is that's holding us back.
So is that similar to like self-sabotage? Would it be in that
I would say it's definitely in that same category as self-sabotage in a way.
So it's more so like self-sabotage is kind of like I'm just doing things to mess up, but self-handicap is I'm purposely limiting myself. So I guess they're a little different, but
I guess you can say that there's a little bit of variance in between the two.
Okay. Yeah.
But self-handicapping is definitely when you just don't go out and put in that effort, or when you don't go do something or give it your 100% effort out of fear of whatever it is that's, that you're fearful of.
Now, I'm going to say this wasn't pre-planned. I wrote down 5. She wrote down 5, but I feel like we rolling with it because the next one I got is almost on par with what she just said is people want to be extraordinary without doing extra. So think about that. I know it's kind of gimmicky, said the word extra and ordinary, but I didn't make up the word. I didn't make up the English language. Mm-hmm. But people often want to be, let's go back to where we are in modern times. We got TikTok virality. People want to be celebrities off of quick fame and success, but that's not what any real successful person, whatever role they're in, they were doing it many years before they actually got the payoff, whether that's getting the job, getting the degree, becoming famous, becoming a millionaire, whatever that is. It happened years, sometimes decades before that. So you got to put in that extra work. And sometimes that looks like doing something that either for free, like an internship, or doing grunt work. Like sometimes you have to do the stuff no one else wants to do. And then we get to the level your skill sets gets better. Now you can put it into a level where now I know what to do because I've learned all the ins and outs of this role. Because a lot of times people want to get, I'll use an example. Everyone here is either in college or fresh out of college or have some kind of degree. I've probably interviewed in the last 5-6 months, I would say 30, 40 people. I've looked at maybe 200 resumes. And one thing I kept seeing was the fact that they had just the degree and that was all there on their resume. They were like, hey, how much is going to pay? What hourly can I expect? I want this much. And I'm big on like, this business is growing, so it'll be opportunities, but I let them know, like, you haven't shown me yet what you can do. Like, I get you have the degree. That's great. That just shows me you're competent enough to follow orders. And how this business moves, you have to go beyond that. So going back to the point, you got to put in some work sometimes that doesn't instantly pay off to get where you want to go.
Yeah. And I know, piggybacking off of that, like I know being a coach in softball and also being around college baseball team all the time, like I see in certain players, those that do go that extra mile or those that do the extra work behind somebody's back or when you don't think somebody's watching. But at the end of the day in athletics, there's always somebody watching, whether it's a coach, a trainer, a teammate, parent in the stands, whatever. There's always somebody watching you put in that extra extra work, extra effort. I've seen players, never take plays off even at practice, or always hustle 100%, even if they know that that ball is going to drop and it's an easy single. They could just sit back and just field it nice and easy, but they're still going to give it their all to go after that ball as hard as they can and as intentional as they can. So I think that it's those things that you do that are a little bit more extraordinary that are going to set you apart.
Yep, exactly.
So my next point that I wanted to make for number 3 is going to be self-limiting beliefs and self-doubt. So I think a lot of times as humans, it's almost, I want to go as far as to say it's almost human nature at first to put ourselves in a box and not see what our full potential is. And a lot of times when we do this, that's when, we don't realize what it is that we're actually capable of doing. So if you break through this box in a sense, then you'll be able to, explore other options. It's going to be so uncomfortable at first, but what I always say is you have to get comfortable with the uncomfortable.
Mhm.
And if you're in this box of comfortability, why not do things that are going to make your box bigger? It's kind of like the idea I just thought of, when you get a fish and as your fish grows, you have to get it a bigger fish tank because it needs more space to swim in, whatever. So it's the same thing with your comfort zone or with whatever your potential is. You want greater potential, you need to make your box bigger.
Mm-hmm. So this goes perfect to the next one. So I'm going to do a little joke. Knock.
Who's there?
Opportunity. Now, I know that was lame. Don't kill me. But basically, opportunity knocks in a lot of different ways. And I like to say, don't think that opportunity only knocks at your front door, because a lot of times they want it gift wrapped in a nice little box that says, here's that job. Here's that success. Here's that opportunity that I always wanted. And sometimes it won't even come in a box. It might be left on your doorstep open. It might be left in the backyard. It might be on the side door. So the reason I say this is because going back to the hiring process I've been doing the last few months, I've had people literally say, I want to work with athletes, police, and the psychological, the physical, mixing it all together. And I'm like, who can do that? And then they didn't do it because they didn't see it unraveling, I guess, in the way they thought. Like, I'm using a real life situation where they went with another opportunity, which I understand because it tied in more to their degree program. But it was ironic because the person they were going to work with works with police officers. And we, the following week, did a workshop with the city of North Miami. And it's nothing against this person, but it's just funny when people see it as that. They don't think, oh, what can this become? Sometimes you have to make it your opportunity. Sometimes it looks like anything. Sometimes it looks like a bad opportunity. But you have to figure out and assess it. And I think people don't do that. They automatically write it off because it wasn't easy. Let's be real. People going back to your comfort zone. They want it handed to them. And I'm trying to be that person. Like, oh, people these days, this and that. But it's the truth. And we're wired for that. Humans want to get to point A to B as quick as possible. So it's like, if I can get there without having to go through the hardship, fine. And there's opportunities you can do that, but it probably won't get you to where you truly want to be. So
I think another habit that people fall into as well is, just waiting until something comes to them and not putting in the steps or putting in the effort and that little extra work to be able to get that thing that they want. I think a lot of times, a lot of people fall into the habit of just waiting for it to come to them. And I think that that's where we really limit ourselves, like as humans in general as well.
Yep.
So let me ask you, Nick, when I tell you you are an average of the 5 closest people that you surround yourself with, what do you think?
Think you are who you hang around. They say the network is your net worth is your network. So you should be around people that help that grow.
Exactly. So that's what brings me to my next point, is that another thing that holds you back from greatness is your environment or who you surround yourself around. I think a lot of times we don't realize, sometimes until it's too late, that the people that we're hanging around with is actually holding us back or is actually taking us away from our true potential. So I think being a little bit more conscious of who it is that we're surrounding ourselves around, who we're spending time with, whether it's in the workplace, whether it's in our free time, whether it's at home, who we live with, how we pass our time on a daily basis. I think that all that plays a huge role in kind of how we segue our way to greatness.
Now, I'll give you a real life anecdote, how something like literally just being in a room and with the right person, right people got me opportunities. So I have a friend who I went to school with, high school, and we kept in touch over the years. And basically being in a room with him led me to being on ESPN and Fox Sports, which led to me working with the military, which led to me working with other opportunities. So just being around a person who has, not saying you're using these people, it's just that if you're around people that bring the value that you need, if it's simple as hey, I'm doing an internship and I want to work with this population, and then you get to work with that population, boom. Or I want to meet these type of people, me just being around you and you around those type of people. Like your softball coach, if I want to be in the softball world, it would make sense to hang around someone like you. And it seems so cut and dry, but a lot of times we don't do that. And we wonder why, oh, what's happening? I'm not getting opportunities. But you're only hanging around people who either go against what you're trying to do or even pull you back and make you worse. And it's sometimes hard to do that because, it's life. You don't want to just abandon people, but sometimes you got to realize like that's what we got to do.
Yeah, I think sometimes we don't realize that we're in a position to where we have to cut ties until something really significant and bad happens that screams it at us versus us kind of picking up on those almost red flags in a sense leading up to it.
So yeah, so it's my turn on me?
It is your turn.
Okay, see, hey, I had to get my mind right real quick. So this is probably, these are no particular order, but this one, knowing or not knowing when to pivot. So you heard of something called the sunk cost fallacy?
I'm ready to learn.
So basically, it's the cognitive bias that our brain is wired for this, and it's just how our brains like to fill in gaps. So it's the sense of if I put X amount of investment in something, I'm going to keep investing for the sheer fact that I've already put so much into it. It wouldn't make sense to not continue. So for example, let's give a scenario. Let's say you hired a contractor to help renovate something in your house, and you put down, let's say, $5,000 deposit that handles whatever expenses he needed. And then he comes to you and said, hey, I need to do some more stuff. We need another $5,000. You're like, wait, you didn't even finish that stuff. But you're like, you know what? All right, here's $5,000. $10,000 down now, right? He comes back a month later. All right, we finished this part, but there's something with the roof. And you're like, wait, I thought this was, and you give, hey, we need another $5. And you keep doing it. And you're just like, well, I can just find another contractor and figure out how can I get this done and be finished for a less amount. But the logic is like, I'm gonna keep going because I already put $15,000 in this point. Now you can see this in your romantic relationships. You date someone, it's like, we've had so much history together. But let's look at real history in the world. Not every history book shows the best thing. There's some good triumphs. You can talk about the Revolutionary War and America being free. Then you can talk about something like mass genocides that have happened throughout the years. Those are both history. So should we clamor to the one that is bad just because it's been around? No. So people need to know when to pivot and say, you know what? If this isn't working, you don't quit. Pivoting mean a lateral movement, like me with Mind Body One. I said this last night in our meeting. 10 years ago, this was called mental muscle fitness. It was a workout with some mental cues and stuff. Then it became mental muscle performance when I got my sports psych degree. And then it became Mind Body One after I worked at an addiction center, and my boss/mentor asked me to make a program where it integrates all the mental, the physical, psychological. And that's what birthed Mind Body One back in 2015. So I pivoted numerous times, and I could argue it was hard because you get married to things like logos and brands. I'm like, well, I've been this, I got to change all this and get a new logo, get a new marketing strategy. But it's like, know what? This is where the business is going. And I could arguably say it was a good choice, but that not always even works. Sometimes the pivot needs a pivot. So knowing when do I need to change what I'm doing, regroup, recalibrate, and figure out what's the next move versus like, let me keep investing in this endeavor simply because I put time into it. That's sometimes a big mistake.
Yeah. And I think in our careers, we face that a lot, especially if you put a lot of time, 10 plus years working for a certain company. And maybe at some point you just feel like that you started the plateau in your own personal growth, or maybe there's a salary cap or there's nowhere else for you to go. And I think that, those are those times where we really need to consider, okay, is it time for me to pivot? Is this truly what I want? Is this where I want to be? Or do I want to be able to move forward and maybe try something else? For anybody that's followed my softball coaching career, at the youth level, I made what would be considered a lateral move, this past summer, going from one organization to the next. And no, I didn't go to this glam and glory organization. However, I made a lateral move for something that worked out better for me, and that it might not pay off right now in the present, but I know, in the very, very near future, I'm in a situation, in an environment actually where there's a lot more support and there's a lot more potential for growth for me once I do start creating and grasping more opportunities for myself in the coaching world down here. So I think, the idea of identifying when you need to pivot or when you need a change, I think that that's huge. And that's a really awesome point that you made there.
All right. So
my turn. That's one that I got for you guys is discipline and or the kind of a combination of boundary setting as well. Now, discipline, first thing that comes to my mind when I hear the word discipline is, okay, I'm going to wake up at this time every single day. I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. But discipline doesn't always just have to be surrounded around fitness or a routine. It's just being able to also stay true to your morals and like
Yep.
who you are, and just in general, and being able to push yourself to go after whatever it is that you're going after. And I think a lot of times what kind of gets in the way of us staying disciplined is boundary setting, or not knowing how to set boundaries, whether it's in the workplace, whether it's, with family, with friends, in your relationships, just kind of in general with anybody that you come across throughout the day. I think a lot of times, sometimes we let our boundaries get crossed, and then we let that be a detriment to us. And I think that those two things kind of play a hand in hand together in how we stay disciplined.
I agree, because discipline, I think, is misconstrued for automatic. Like, you just either have it or you don't. And it's like, I'd say everything's a skill. So with discipline, I like to say, like, it's what, like, that's usually, I love analogies, right? So let's say we're in a car. Motivation is the gas that fuels it, but discipline keeps you in the car. Because if I'm in the car, we're going to, say, Texas. That's 2,000 miles away or whatever. And I'm like, oh, we're going to Texas. I'm all motivated, happy to go. The gas up. We got GPS going. That'd be our goal. See what I did there. So it's mapping out where to go. We got the fuel. But I'm like, you know what? I'm sick of being in this car. I need to stretch my legs. Now, obviously, I'm not going to abandon the trip. But think about if we stop every 100 miles because
Never
my
gonna get
legs are
there.
tired from sitting cramped up. That's the discipline of, like, I didn't want to work out today, or I didn't want to go to class, or I didn't want to just put in that effort to get to the next step. So when we talk about achieving our form of greatness, you have to have that discipline, but it's not this automatic button press of I want it, so I'm gonna keep doing it. Because let's be real, it ebbs and flows. Like, some days you're on it. Like, being an entrepreneur for the last decade, there's days where I'm like, man, I gotta do X, Y, and Z. But there's times where I'm like, no, what, I gotta do it anyway, even if my brain isn't there, or my mind, or even my body. Sometimes I'm sure right now I've been on my health kick more, and it's like some days you don't want to do it, but the discipline is I'm gonna do it regardless and just keep going.
Hmm. Absolutely. I think discipline is severely, misconstrued in a way.
Mhm.
So I really like how you touched on that point.
All right, so my last one, number 9 on our list, is people who play victim. I wanted to put this in there, not to pick, because I'm a big believer in, like, there is times when you are put in a bad predicament. I've been there, you've been there, I'm sure everyone has. But then you got to analyze and say, am I being really wrong by these people or these situations, or I'm just playing victim? Because it's easier to say, what did y'all do? You talk about locus of control. Like, what did they do to get me here? Like, wait, what? I get, like, say, for example, is use sports again, since we both are in that world. If you're on a team, the coach does have to make the calls, but then you got to ask, what did you do to get to the point where you got put on the bench, or they chewed you out because of a mistake? It's not because they just have it in for you. You ever heard parents? You work with
Oh
parents.
yeah, I know all about
Why do you
parents.
not like my child or my kid or whatever? Why they're not playing? Is like, do you ever ask yourself, or your child ask themselves, did I do what needed to be done? So when I talk about playing the victim, it's not to pick on the person, but I've known numerous people who will vent, and venting's fine, but it comes a time when it's like, am I just venting, or do I just want someone to agree with me? And you got to be able to know the difference, because if I'm in a situation where everything's going wrong, no matter how much it hurts, how bad it is, I got to backtrack or reverse engineer to the beginning of that. It could have started off at the fact that I just didn't apply myself enough, or I made a choice that wasn't the best option. And when I saw it wasn't going that way, they didn't pivot, they doubled down. So you see how all these
They're all
revolve
related.
around each other? So don't play victim. It's okay to feel bad, but leave it there. Once you feel it, okay, man, this sucks. I don't like the situation I'm in. But the next step is, how did I get here so I can know not to do it again? Because a lot of people repeat the same mistakes over and over. So don't play victim. Find your role. It might hurt to say to yourself, dang, this is my fault. It's on me, coach. But you got to do that sometimes. So
No, and in the sports realm too, I've run into that obviously all the time at the college level and at the youth level. And I tell my kids all the time, like, I asked them, I said, do you want to know who makes the lineup? And obviously they all point at me. They're like, you silly. And I'm just like, no, it's you. At the end of the day, you create that lineup. And it's my job and responsibility is to identify who's the best 9 for me to put on the field today. But you determine whether or not you're one of those best 9. The best 9 are always the ones that aren't going to complain about playing time, in my book.
It's easy to point that blame, but you got to be accountable. So with that being said, bring it home, number 10.
My last point that I want to make is authenticity. I think a lot of times we don't truly know who we are at the inner core. And I think, taking that time to yourself and kind of developing who you are, who you want to be, seeing your vision and going after that vision, I think that that's going to really help us find out who our true, authentic self is. I think we all whether we know it or not, we all have morals and values that we live by. And sometimes we contradict those morals and values. And sometimes after we do those, like for example, if something that's important to use, not lying, and you go out and you lie, sometimes after that, depending on how much like you care for that moral, like you're going to feel like crap afterwards because you did that. And that's when we start to stray away from who we are authentically. So I think a lot of times, a lot of the things that we do on a daily basis, whether it's in our careers or whatever path it is that we're going on, sometimes we take U-turns or we try and take shortcuts that kind of stray us off of who we are. And a lot of times that's when we start to feel a little bit like almost crappier about ourselves, or where we feel like, okay, we have this feeling of this isn't right or something's wrong here. I think that that's when we get steered off course, and then we have to get back on course. So I think knowing your true authentic self and staying true to that person, your values, your morals, I think that that's something that's going to eventually pivot you right into greatness.
All right. So that's our 10 list. This is not an exhaustive list. So if you have anything you want to add, put them in the comments below. This doesn't mean that you do these things or don't do these things you're going to achieve, but just letting you know we're going to get you on the right path. So thanks as always, guys, for tuning in with us, and get your mind right.
Thanks, guys.